There are times in these last 2 weeks where I've considered that healing might actually just be a huge scam that will set you up for failure in this current reality that we're living in, because it feels like success is only for the people that use their trauma to get what they want. So I'm talking about the narcissist, for example. The narcissist always feels like they get what they want. And part of this healing journey where you realize that there's no going back, that maybe, just maybe, you might have been worth, rather not worth, but you might have been better off if you hadn't started, if you hadn't taken an awareness of underlying conditions in your systems that needed work. That maybe if you just remained quote unquote unhealed, then maybe you'd have stood a chance. That is the phase I'm in right now, where it's a mix of nihilism with demotivation, so to speak. And I'm trying to be, because I've been learning about this thing, to be an optimist nihilist. So optimistic nihilism essentially is what it's called, where you still find hope in this fallen world. And I think that's the downside of awakening, as you really start to question anything and everything, if it's worth it. I am in that phase of awakening. And even though I'd done this, we are now in week 9, so welcome. Well, week 10, but I am a bit behind. But having done this for a while now, the first 7 weeks, I was fine. I came to this book and I'm thinking, I want to learn more about spiritual creativity, like understanding creativity from a different perspective. So I was like, this book looks like it's the one to take me there. And the first few chapters, I even highlighted it. They were like a breeze. I never admitted to myself that I might actually be a blobbed artist. For me, I was like, no, we're focusing on learning what this higher creativity looks like, because it was a new concept to me. And the first few sessions were a walk in the park, in that it felt like just shadow work. Like it felt like, oh, I'm just um, going back through my inner child healing process again and seeing where I might have missed fixing potholes, so to speak. Sorry, my English there was very terrible. But that was what the last 7 weeks felt like, right? Or rather, the first 7 weeks, that's how they felt like. And it was only during week 9, where it was the first week 8 was about recovering strength, and week 9 was about recovering a sense of compassion. It was during those weeks that I had to admit to myself that I actually might be a blocked artist, because now I started to do stock take on my inventory of skills and seeing all the skills that laid to rest. And sure enough, I came up with all these noble reasons as to why some of those things needed to die. Like, oh no, I'm fulfilled. I don't need to do that again. And I started to see how most of my vision was trauma based. Like, and I never wanted to operate from a place of trauma, but trauma based more so like I want to be this and fix this world part of the world, because that's the trauma experienced. And that can only get you so far. I know it's a very strong drive because most businesses are built on trauma, but I don't want my experiences to be trauma based, because what happens when I heal that trauma? Is it still my purpose, or it's a chosen convenient purpose at the time? And that's where this week really shined in bringing a sense of compassion to the journey, bringing a sense of compassion to what healing looks like, it also brought a sense of compassion when it comes to the human experience, especially when it comes to being a creative. Like saying, we understand what it is you're going through. We understand the procrastination. We understand the laziness. And it's might look like it's that, but it is not that. There's something deeper to it. And it made everything that was done in the first 7 weeks make more sense because it was actually preparing you for these moments right here. Because it's making you relook at your childhood from a creative standpoint. When I did my inner child healing, I was just looking at it from what trauma did I face and the different responses that I came up with to deal with that trauma and what that I'm still carrying into my adulthood. I never bothered to look at how it affected me from a creative standpoint. And it's these 2 weeks that really shined. So I want to start off this week by reading a page, right? Like this is towards the end. So I'm going to start from the end, going into the start. Um, but this week was filled with a lot of giant moments. Like my commentary in this chapter was just like, damn, because they were calling me out and I had nowhere to run. And it took me so long to do this chapter, even though it's a very short, because I was just like, damn, this is next level. So I'm going to read a line here that says, once we admit the need for help, the help arrives. The ego always wants to claim self sufficiency. It would rather pose as a creative loner than ask for help. Ask anyway. And I do not want to lie, this resonated so much with my entire life journey. I grew up not wanting to ask for help. I was the firstborn, but I was the firstborn that didn't have a voice, that felt like my voice was not heard, that felt like my needs were not justified. So I never bothered asking for help. Rather, I'd just watch my parents be and try not to be a burden. So that's the one thing that made me not ask, not just for help, for anything, not ask for the drumming lessons I'd wanted to do for a long time, not ask my dad for a computer so I could have had an early start to my creative pursuits on a computer. There's so many things I'd never asked for. And that spilled very much into my adulthood. Even in my creative pursuits, I hardly asked for for help. Because in my last job, I remember it was a thing where they're like, Ozzy, you're great and everything, but sometimes just ask us for help. Like ask, you're better off if you just ask than trying to figure out something that someone in the room already figured out. Because obviously it costs time. But I realized that for the most part, I hated asking for help. And it's funny because when I look at spirituality and like primarily like the astrology of your Saturn return, if you know what that is, good for you. If you don't, I just advise you to look at it. Don't with an open-minded perspective. But my Saturn return, essentially the main theme of it, it fell in my fourth house of community, of house and family. And it basically your Saturn return is a lesson that you really need to learn, right? During your Saturn return, which takes about like 29 years. So mine was just now in February, specifically on the 25th of February was when it fell. But that's been a huge theme where I'm compelled to learn how to ask for help and sit in the comfort of receiving that help. That has been my biggest lesson and understanding that that's what community is about. It's about being in need and assisting other people that are also in need, but being in need and being vulnerable in your need in order to receive help from other people. And I struggle with that, man. Like, sure, I've learned the lesson on paper, but I remember recently I received help from my sister, financial help, and it was so damn hard to actually just accept that that happened. You know, even when she was trying to explain to me why she's helping me, I was like, don't, just help me out. Don't even explain anything because it's gonna make me feel more uncomfortable. And I accepted the help, but it was hard because now there's this things sometimes where I feel like, oh, am I now indebted to her for life? Which is not what it's about. And I was like, oh, that's where the flow is as well, is that you think when someone helps you, you are indebted to them. And it's funny because when I help people, I do not expect anything in return. I do not expect your allegiance. I am okay if, let's say, you betray me. I'm not going to come tomorrow and say, oh, I helped you that one day. Now you're doing this to me. I'm like, no, I helped you because I wanted to. And I think it's also because I don't believe that people can help you just because they want to. It feels like there's always an asterisk somewhere. Yet I've proven to myself that it's not everyone is like that. Like I myself like fruit to myself. And not everyone is like that. So I don't know why I still sit in the discomfort, or at least why I sit in the discomfort of not receiving help for so long. I have a special person that recently just said, they say if you need help, ask. And my response was, yeah, the only help I need right now, get me in a room with Obama and I'll be fine. Because I genuinely didn't know like what kind of help that they're in the capacity to assist me with, or what kind of help I even need, which is another thing where sometimes you really don't know what kind of help you need. Like, you need help, but like, you don't know what capacity you can put someone to assist you with the help that you need. I don't know if that's making sense, but that was a thing. That was a thing. And what I loved about this chapter now, remember I spoke about laziness, I spoke about procrastination, that all of those are a mask to something deeper that you are actually lacking as an artist. And when they cracked this, I was like, oh my God, that's the word I've been looking for. Because I've been feeling like I lost maybe my passion, looking at like all the things I've been passionate about. I even started to do some shadow work a little bit and started writing down, okay, when lost do you remember being passionate about leaving? And trying to find all these things that made me feel passionate about a pursuit. Because the talent is there, but like I really am seeing the talent is not enough. Like, so what, you're talented. If you're not willing to wake up every day and do the thing, then why does it even matter? Why does your talent matter? So when it came to the concept of compassion and grace, understanding where I am creatively and the block that I need to get over, I don't know if that's even the right term, understanding what passion and drive look like, understanding what purpose and procrastination within the purpose looks like. I met this word called enthusiasm. And before we get there, also met the fear behind the enthusiasm. So, there's like fear, and then behind the fear, there's other things that fear is keeping you away from. So, I'm going to read from these books a few lines that were in italics. Blocked artists are not lazy, they are blocked. Do not call the inability to start laziness, call it fear. Do not call procrastination laziness, call it fear. Use love for your artist to cure. Fear is what blocks an artist. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of not finishing, the fear of failure and of success, the fear of beginning at all. If there's only one cure for fear, that cure is love. Oof. Remember when I said I made a list where let me actually get it. I have a new journal. So I literally wrote like pages on pages on that. And I say to myself, have you noticed any themes in your life when last you felt a sense of purpose that made living so damn good as a choice? I know that is very dark. There are times when I'm just like dying feels like a better choice, honestly, but not with my own hand. Like if God decided let's wrap things up, I'm like, yeah, sure, let's wrap it up. But what is it that made you feel a sense of purpose. And most of it was things that involved music and love. And I wrote to myself that the themes I'm noticing from my list is literally love makes life worth it. Doing things with others also makes life worth it. Dancing, movement, music makes life worth it. And this was where I started being honest with myself to say, yes, it is fear. Like this whole creative block has been, there isn't it around fear, but I'm like, what's the block? And that's where enthusiasm came into the story. And I loved discovering this for myself because I literally saw that I've been losing enthusiasm for creative pursuits. And that enthusiasm was dying because for the longest part, I didn't recognize how blocked I am. It was something that was so hidden to me that despite being creative, I lacked the enthusiasm. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this, so what? Like, I am designing digital experiences for companies and all of that, but they lacked enthusiasm. Like, sure, I was good at it, but I was so unenthusiastic about it because also I'm looking at the state of the world. I'm like, what am I adding to it with this level of creativity? And most of it was done due to fear. Like most choices in my creative pursuits were done out of survival mode, right? So being in this state where I'm not even trying to survive anymore, not for the good parts, but like more so where I'm like jobless for this long. It's like I've watched those creative habits, spirits, slowly die. I'm not as enthusiastic about sitting down and researching the latest in industry, creative industry trends. I'm not really keen for that. With DJing and being an artist, there's no enthusiasm to learn. Like there's no enthusiasm to get up there and shine, which I know I very much can. And I've through the help of this book, I've been going out and listening to sets differently, trying to find what can spark my enthusiasm. And sure, there are some sets where the DJ's doing their thing. I'm like, damn, I wish I could be doing that right now. And those are sets where I'm like, this was so beautiful, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. Why? Because I hadn't dealt with the fear behind the enthusiasm. I just called myself lazy at times because to be true, being a child, I was lazy and that was nice. I always tried to look for the easy route, the easier option, right? I was a child that was celebrated way too early that I never bothered to give it my all. That's the downside of celebrating your kids for the bare minimum. So I got so used to low expectations, meeting those low expectations, being celebrated for the low expectations, and never pushing myself to shine in the truest essence of what I know I'm capable of. In fact, the topmost comment I received in high school from my teachers, I remember this, was your son has so much potential. He has so much potential. Look at how good it is. And that potential laid dormant for a long time. That potential was met with fear, and a lot of it, a huge chunk of it, was buried by fear from a young age. And in this phase of adulting, I think subconsciously I've been trying to find that grave where fear buried my potential. And I think I've found it. And now it's time to start digging because I'm literally in a ditch and there's fear that if I dig more, I will fall in some more. That's why I started with the whole healing journey being tough in that you, once you start, if you don't see it through, you're going to be far much worse than you had been if you had just remained in a state of ignorance of your unhealed state. In fact, it would have been a superpower. So busy trying to find enthusiasm, and it's important when you're trying to uncover that you know what it is you're looking for, because as far as I'm concerned, all I know is a fear. So how do I know when I found that enthusiasm? And they explain that beautifully. She says, enthusiasm is not an emotional state. It is a spiritual commitment, a loving surrender to our creative process, a loving recognition of all the creativity around us. Enthusiasm, from the Greek, filled with God, is an ongoing energy supply tapped into the flow of life itself. Enthusiasm is grounded in play, not work. Far from being a brain numbed soldier, our artist is actually our child within, our inner playmate. As with all playmates, it is joy, not duty, that makes for a lasting bond. And you find that enthusiasm where? In a child. You find that enthusiasm by reconnecting the love that you've cultivated all these years for yourself, for life, for everything, like the love that you've experienced it, and meeting that love with your inner child and forming this union together that births joy from within. And that is where I think at least my enthusiasm will birth itself from. So what I realized also was, what has the fear conditioned me to do is self-sabotage myself from starting the process of digging. And this is where she spoke about like creative U-turns. So she says recovering from artist block, like recovering from any major illness or injury, requires a commitment to health. Those of us addicted to sympathy in the place of creativity can become increasingly threatened as we become increasingly functional. Many recovering artists become so threatened that they make U-turns and sabotage themselves. We are more comfortable being a victim of artist block than risking having to consistently be productive and healthy. On, oh my God, like you're more supportive. You come on like and say, "Hi guys, I'm depressed." I just chose depression, but like obviously depression is a big thing. I chose it because it's such a prominent thing where there's now been more acceptance for depressed people than healed people in our journey of bringing awareness to depression. Right, it sort of like tipped to a point where it's not serving us the way we intended it to, that level of awareness. But I've seen that like in moments where I was down, moments where I admitted to being under, and even on social media, like in moments where I'm like, admit, yo guys, I'm struggling. You get more sympathy for that when you're shining. Even congratulations when you're shining. Like they don't tell you like when you start it's there, but like when you're like in that level of growth, it fades away, right? It's like once you make it, you become a villain in your own story. Like somehow we want to tear you down. I don't know. Like it's a weird thing as a creator, especially in the creative industry. Like I don't know if it's like fake meekness or what, but I have seen it, and I think that's what also hindered me from asking for help because I don't like looking weak. That's another thing. I don't like looking weak, so I'd rather just like drown in my own sorrow, in my own helplessness. Helplessness. There we go. So just having to sit in my helplessness is better than broadcasting it because I feel like the support I'd get would cripple me in a way. Um, because growing up there was a time that I used that to look weak and fragile because also I was like a skinny, tiny human being in hopes that, you know, I'd get the attention I wasn't getting from home. Your admittance, that feels good. But yeah, there is definitely a lot of work to do in uncovering that fear and building a space of love for myself and being able to ask for help when I need it. But please, so much work in finding that enthusiasm back. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people now getting into this book. I'll not give you a warning. Don't do this book thinking it's gonna make you an overnight success. I've seen what's the artist Dochi making this book popular, and a lot of people are getting into it thinking they are gonna just wake up and get to where she was. She did this book 5 years ago, first of all. Secondly, you have to put in the work and you're gonna dip and go up, but you have to commit to the process, no matter how long it takes. And it's the only way you can guarantee your expectations you want out of this book is by doing in the work yourself. If you don't do the work, don't expect anything. And I am going to continue digging through that fear and finding my enthusiasm. I also feel like hiding. So probably would take some break off of like socials for a bit. I know this hiding is like a mechanism of when I come back, I want to come back like strong, but it's also just giving myself space now to actually do the work so that I don't get that creative sympathy that's going to keep me here. Like, sure, I want to broadcast at some point. I'm like, yeah, this way the struggles, but I want to do that after I overcome them. And currently, I don't know where my creative endeavors are going to go towards next, primarily because the more I've uncovered my inner child's creative life, the more have really been honest about all those things I've wanted to do, but never got to do because, yeah, the inner child never got what they wanted. So I'm out here like re-looking at some of these desires, these passions that I've had over the years, re-looking at my trauma, how some of them match my trauma, and how some of them have disappeared after dealing with my trauma. And how then do I redefine myself after? So that would be a process on its own. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens after I do it. And thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great week. Need to start working on the next episode because I'm late. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Have a great one. Cheers.